All right, Chargers fans, so happy to be joined now by Ben Fennell, who does write for the NFL draft or write about the NFL draft rather for NFL Network. Ben, thanks for taking the time to join us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's exciting that we're already here in draft season with the Senior Bowl a couple days away. It's just this NFL draft's a 365 animal, but it's just nice that 28 teams have joined us. Four still alive in the playoffs, but a lot of these teams have looked to next year already. So we have to look at the prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very exciting time, and like you mentioned, the Senior Bowl is coming up, and that is, our topic of choice today. I just wanted to get your thoughts on overall. Do you think that teams will put more stock into the Senior Bowl this year, given the amount of COVID opt-outs that there were and the combines being different? How do you think teams will value the Senior Bowl this year in comparison to other years?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily putting more stock in it, but you're going to put more value in the things you can vet. And you just have to understand this entire class and this entire process is behind vetting these prospects. And that all started with the lack of pro days last spring. Because while you get some testings and some metrics on the current prospects, that's when you start to acquire information about the next year's prospects. And then a lot of these campuses, we know certain schools had their seasons cut, canceled, postponed. Certain scouts weren't allowed on campuses. So
Yeah.
just the understanding who these players are and understanding what we love to say, the limitations of the tape. We can watch every snap of their career on the tape, but who is the man? Who's the teammate? Who's the coworker we're going to get? Who's the person? In order to figure that out, you got to go talk to them. You got to talk to the people around them. And that's when you get all that done at the pro days on campus. And you talk to their strength and conditioning coaches and their academic advisors and their position coaches. A lot of that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So for lack of better words, getting your hands on these kids down at the Senior Bowl week is just valuable information to learn about the kids and to vet them and to figure out who they are as people. We can figure out who they are on the field. Their football DNA is on the tape. But who they are as people is such a big kind of piece to the puzzle when evaluating the prospects.
That's a good call. And, I think, we as Chargers fans were so lucky to see what Justin Herbert had done in the Senior Bowl last year. And I think, they got a really good group of guys this year and headlined kind of by the Alabama players. Obviously, everybody knows that the Chargers need offensive line help. I'm really intrigued by Alex Leatherwood in particular in this offensive line group, but I know a lot of people in terms of draft Twitter, maybe think he's a guard. Where do you stand on Alex Leatherwood, and do you think he could do enough this week at the Senior Bowl to warrant consideration at the number 13 overall pick for the Chargers?
Yeah, I feel like some of these big time program players get absolutely ripped apart and overanalyzed.
Yeah.
And Alex Leatherwood is front and center part of that conversation. He survived 2 years, 2.5 years in the SEC at left tackle for the University of Alabama and didn't have a whole lot of issues against the
Right.
who's who of SEC speed rushers and NFL caliber defensive ends. He handled, everything they asked him to do. Now he's more of a dominant run blocker. He has some issues in pass protection, but he's a strong player. He's got great length. I'm going to let him survive at tackle first before I just say off the cuff, I'm moving you into guard. He's got a lot of reps and a lot of experience at tackle and a lot of good play at tackle.
Yeah.
So I think the positional fit and moving these players around is sometimes premature. And if you want to get into some sort of measurement threshold or a length threshold, all that does is prevent you from finding good players because Joe Thomas had short arms. You can survive. So I think the writing off players just based on their measurement thresholds is a very dangerous game. But I think Leatherwood's done enough to warrant an opportunity at tackle. Now it's just a matter of what draft capital is that warranting. And it's not necessarily that he's a bad player. It's just a deep tackle class. So if he does slide into day two, it's not a negative to Alex Leatherwood. I think it's more of a praise just to how deep this offensive line, in particular, the tackle class is.
That's a good call. And this tackle group and really the whole offensive line group down there in Mobile is going to be a lot of fun. I'm also really intrigued by the small school products that are this time around. You mentioned COVID canceling their seasons. This is going to be the first time that we're seeing a Spencer Brown or a Quinn Miners, I think is how you say it, What stands out to you about the small school offensive linemen in this class that are going to be down at Mobile?
Well, they're very interesting. There's 3 or 4 in particular. David Moore is a mauling guard out of Grambling, but the FCS kid, Spencer Brown, as you mentioned, from Northern Iowa, had no season. He was a skinny 190-pound basketball player coming out of high school. I think he played most of his career at like 280. He's been trying to beef up. He's tall, he's long, he's a little raw still. Dylan Raduntz, same kind of thing, a little bit undersized at North Dakota State. They did have that one game against Central Arkansas. It's a throwaway game. Don't even really watch it. It's tough to have a one-game season. Not going to kill or praise Trey Lance for his performance in that game. But Raduntz is another guy just slightly undersized, a little bit like Ezra Cleveland coming out last year, went to the Vikings, I think, in round 2. And then the third guy is the Wisconsin Whitewater, who just got the announcement last week. This guy's a glass-eating, mauling guard, great in a power scheme. He looks to finish defenders. If you could ever get your hands on some Wisconsin Whitewater, he is a nasty, nasty player. He's one of those guys, I think he's biting ankles at the bottom of the pile. So he might be a guy that get in a couple scraps this week and look to turn some heads with his physicality and intensity. I had no issue writing Richie Incognito down for his player comparison and style fit, just to give a little bit of perspective there to the fans. But I think it's a great opportunity for these kids that didn't have the season. And it's also a bit of a, what are we going to get? I mean, you have to remember the human element to all this stuff. This is 19 to 23-year-old young adults in a very turbulent time in their life. So there's a lot of things going on with just becoming adults and handling responsibility, and life is happening. We just had a crazy year of COVID and social issues. Who hasn't seen a weight room? Who hasn't seen, the field in weeks and weeks? Who's a different player? Who lost control of their weight? Who got, addicted to alcohol, drugs, sex, fast food? You have to remember all this life stuff happens. Whose girlfriend broke up with them and is taking it hard. The player you maybe met 2 years ago may be completely different to what you get right now. This NFL draft cycle is going to be so much fun and so unpredictable. And I feel for some of these kids and some of these people that actually have to make the picks. I think we're in nice cushy spots where we get to kind of watch from the second level here and just understand who the players are, but we don't actually have to make any of these selections. But just a very unprecedented kind of draft cycle.
So what you're saying is that fans should be a little more patient and understanding in this draft cycle is what I'm gathering.
And Steven, I've to when the NBA used to allow players from high school. The bust factor was just so much greater. You didn't have as deep of a body of work. So everybody kind of looked good in their tape. You're, drafting guys based on potential and upside with a very limited body of work. Some players haven't been on the field for a year. I mean, Walker Little hasn't been on the field in 2 years. Some of these guys have only played 1 year of college football, like Micah Parsons or Gregory Rousseau. Am I saying they can't be Hall of Famers? No. Is there a huge bust factor for those players? Absolutely. And the O-line, there's other guys. We mentioned the FCS kids who didn't have seasons. How about James Hudson at Cincinnati? He's a 1-year player at Cincinnati. He's a Michigan transfer, converted from the defensive line, only has 11 starts in his career. Finally, he got a bowl game against Georgia. Great. We're going to see him against SEC edge rushers. Gets ejected in the second quarter. Ugh. And then Azeez Ojulari goes on a tear in the second half against this backup tackle. And then Hudson declares for the draft. And it's like, he might be great. He might not be. It's such a small body of work that you don't know. So, there might be teams that say, you know what, I see something in this kid. And on draft day, there's going to be some surprises, let me tell you. But particularly down at the Senior Bowl, James Hudson, the FCS kids, the Wisconsin Whitewater kid, the Grambling kid, really excited to see what they can do down there.
Yeah, that was some great stuff there. And I loved the little reference to Dan Campbell and his press conference that we had yesterday. Let's move to the receiver group, because obviously, the Heisman winner, Devontae Smith, is headlining this group. I really am intrigued by Kadarius Toney as well. Who are some other guys in this receiver group that really stand out to you?
Yeah, Toney obviously is absolutely electric. He shreds grass on every step of his movements. He is dynamic. He's a guy that kind of makes you sit up in your seat just because he's so violent in every movement pattern. I love Amari Rodgers. Don't overthink this kid. He looks like a Deebo Samuel. Great yards after catch every year, just behind Devontae Smith and the leader of yards after catch in college football. Sage Surratt, I mean, he just joined the Senior Bowl a couple days ago. Really productive player at Wake Forest. Didn't play this past year. North Carolina Player of the Year in basketball and football. This is a freak athlete. I've compared him to Jordy Nelson. Has that kind of deceptive speed, a really good all-around athlete. He's going to turn some heads out there. Shi Smith at South Carolina, he's had quarterback issues through most of his career there. He was buried behind Brian Edwards and Debo Samuel. Yeah. Jake Bentley was supposed to be the guy. And then they have Helinski last year. And then Helinski loses the job this year to a true freshman. His career was all over the place, but he might be an Emmanuel Sanders style of player. When he does get the ball in his hands, he is fast, really good yards after catch, really sharp route running, competitive at the catch point. So he might be a guy that has a better NFL career, a lot like the way Emmanuel Sanders came out of SMU a couple years ago. And then these big guys, I know it's kind of a dying breed in the NFL to get these 6'5" receivers because they don't often separate well. And it's tough to just be a physical presence in the NFL when everybody's a physical presence. But Niko Collins at Michigan, he's a height, weight, speed guy, just like Chase Claypool was last year, just like Miles Boykin was the year before. He's 6'4", 225, and runs a legit 4.4. So he's a guy that might be able to beast some smaller corners down in the red zone. And Trayvon Grimes is similar. Not as thick coming out of Florida. He's actually an Ohio State transfer, but he's 6'5" and can run. So he's a guy maybe in some one-on-ones where he just looks like an absolute specimen out there. So long story short, a lot of shapes, sizes. You got your yak guys, your gadget guys, your slot guys like Shi Smith, your height, weight, speed guys, whatever you're looking for. There's kind of a style for you in this class and in particular down at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Niko Collins has been someone that I feel like, you mentioned Shi Smith's quarterback journey. Niko Collins' quarterback journey has not been helped very much either.
I mean, the interesting thing, you get Jim Harbaugh. Can he not sit in some senior high school quarterback's living room and sell the program? Going after transfers year after year after year, nothing but transfers, whether it's Rudock coming over from Iowa and then Shea Patterson and it's just like, I get this guy, get somebody a steady quarterback out there in Michigan. I'm just really excited for them just to have some consistency at the quarterback position. Like you're saying, Niko Collins, front and center of certainly one that didn't benefit from those rotating quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift to the tight ends now. I think a lot of people know who Hunter Long is, obviously, but I'd be lying if I said that I've heard of, Quinton Morris or Noah Gray. What do you make of this tight end group down in Mobile?
It's not the deepest tight end class in general. We all know about Kyle Pitts and Freiermuth. Seems like he's the best inline guy. And Brevin Jordan's probably that Evan Ingram H-back type. This is kind of a coming out party for a lot of these guys that the country doesn't know. Quinton Morris is kind of a Gerald Everett athletic type, like down at the Rams coming out of South Alabama. The two I'm interested in, you kind of hit it. Hunter Long at Boston College, one of the most well-rounded tight ends in the class. Was the leading receiver last year in Boston College and this year in two completely different schemes. Last year was Steve Adazio, run the ball 100 times with A.J. Dillon, condensed formations, a lot of stuff off play action. He had to block in line. And then this year, Jeff Hafley comes over from Ohio State. Let's throw the ball down the field. Let's spread it out a little bit. And he still was productive. So he's shown you he can do a lot of things, and he's a tough kid, has put his hand in the turf, which seems to be a dying thing in college football of tight ends that can play in line. But the one I'm excited about, how about Kenny Yeboah at Ole Miss? He's a Temple transfer. I think he was the highest graded blocking tight end last year by PFF. Then he comes down in the SEC. Start to throw him the ball a little bit more off play action. Had some really nice catch and run opportunities. If Irv Smith Jr. at Alabama goes in the second round and Josiah DeGuara goes in the third round to the Packers, that's Kenny Yeboah. He's that H-back type, kind of a move tight end, but he blocks really well. He pass protects really well, catches the ball really well. Just seems like that breed is becoming a little bit more popular in the NFL to have a tight end that's a little tough, but I need you to be able to move too. Whether it's the quick game, yards after catch, or maybe stretching the seam vertically. I think Kenny Yeboah is going to be one of the darlings down there next week.
All right, well, there you go, guys. Kenny Yeboah, definitely someone to keep an eye on. Let's go to the defensive line group. I'm a big fan of Patrick Jones, as well as Levi Onwuzurike. I think I'm saying that right.
Oh, you got it.
There we go. What do you make of this pass rushing group? And it seems like it's a really good group this year. Carlos Basham is in there as well. Who stands out to you among the defensive line?
Yeah, Onzarike is really interesting. I think he opted out this past year, but he's played up and down the D line at Washington. He's kind of looks like a three tech, but he's played zero nose tackle. He's played off the end, really active, really loose, kind of a thicker version of like a Jerry Tillery coming out of Notre Dame, a guy that doesn't necessarily have a positional fit, but just an athletic terror in there. Is probably a better pass rusher than anything. But then the edge rushers, all sorts of shapes and sizes, and Carlos Basham is the most explosive one, but he's stiff. It's a lot like Rashawn Gary. He's not a guy that's just going to turn the high side corner and be all bendy and loose like we like to see out of our Von Millers and the speed rushers. And that goes right into the other heavy edges, like Rashad Weaver, Patrick Jones. They're not the sexiest pass rushers, but these are guys that are thick. They're 260, 270 pounds. They play the run exceptionally well. So what does that mean? You can play on first down in the NFL. You're not a liability against the run. I got news for you. Not every NFL team runs on every first down. So in order to be productive and get high production, you have to be on the field. And that means being able to stop the run and being an early down player. So there's some guys that may not look great in one-on-one drills like Rashad Weaver, Patrick Jones, those Pitt defensive ends, but they're really good, strong football players. And I think we get a little excited sometimes about the bendy, loose pass rushers that can run around tackles. And there's a couple of those too. Shaka Toney at Penn State, great first step. He's going to turn the corner on every tackle. Quincy Roche down at Miami, another Temple transfer, but he's 235 pounds. I don't know if I can play him on early downs, but I'm getting him on the field every third down I get a chance to. So, how you're going to use these guys at the next level. And not every one of these bodies is going to be for every scheme out there. So there's might be some coaches that have some extra eyes on certain players rather than others. So figuring out who fits your scheme is just as important.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that same mold, I wasn't super into like the fit in Los Angeles because of the scheme, but now they're hiring Brandon Staley, potentially moving to a 3-4. And so Hamilcar Rashed has been someone that I've had to go back and watch because I feel like he's a nice fit at outside linebacker. What do you make of Rashed Jr. out of Oregon State?
He's an interesting player. He's another guy that fits that mold of Tony and Quincy Roche because he's 230, 235 pounds. He's a dip around you guy. So he's not a guy that wants to stack blocks with his hands, play with a lot of violence. He wants to shoot gaps and get around guys. Really good anticipation for backfield action. I think he led the country in TFLs last year. So he's a guy that found his way into a lot of backfields. But when you put on the tape this year, not nearly as productive. I think he tried to get stronger and tried to be more of a point of attack player, but it's not who he is. He's an athletic guy that wins with that first step. So he's one of these guys that's probably in the mold of an outside linebacker than a defensive end. And I think categorizing a lot of these guys is important to do that. Quincy Roche is another one. He's an outside linebacker all day long. Doesn't mean you can't be productive in the NFL. We've seen Von Millers, we've seen Harold Landry's at that height, weight, speed go in the second round and be, decent football players. And there's guys like Janarius Robinson at Florida State, like 5-star. There's certain guys whose college careers just didn't go great. We mentioned the Niko Collins of the world and guys that had quarterback issues. Florida State had some issues, let me tell you guys. But this guy is a specimen. He shows up and wakes up in the morning with some things you can't teach. And that's what the Senior Bowl is all about too. Maybe I can show you some things I didn't get an opportunity to down at my college program, or maybe my defensive coordinator moved me around and I didn't feel comfortable at a certain spot. And it's an opportunity for guys to kind of detach themselves from their programs. And that's the big conversation with some of the big names. Mac Jones. You want to detach him from the University of Alabama. You think he had a nice cushy scheme, the run game, the RPOs, all those weapons. Let's remove him from that and then evaluate it. So Mac Jones had a great career. We want to remove him. Janarius Robinson, horrendous career, and we want to remove him. So it's kind of different styles and different reasons, but the same kind of general philosophy.
That's great stuff, man. This has been really a great experience for me. And, I was going to end with Mac Jones just out of curiosity. Obviously, the Chargers don't need a quarterback.
Yeah, we could finish off Mac Jones. He's an interesting guy to talk about.
Yeah. So I've seen some, obviously Philip Rivers just retired. Some people have said that maybe the Colts should go explore the Mac Jones avenue. A lot of people said that Steelers should maybe do that. They obviously just signed Dwayne Haskins. If Mac Jones does go down there in Mobile, and like you said, he separates himself from his team, and he has a great week in Mobile. Do you think that he'll be a first round pick, or what do you make of Mac Jones and his evaluation?
You know, the interesting thing with Mac Jones is everybody wants these athletic quarterbacks, the guys with mobility that can play out of structure, create when nothing's there. You hear arm talent all the time. You want a guy that can play loose and has a strong arm. Mac Jones doesn't check any of those boxes. So it's a bit of a conundrum as far as evaluating prospects to say, well, that's where you take all the first round quarterbacks, those guys with all those tools and all the physical traits. The question you have to ask is, how are you using him, and can you win with him? And we've seen Jared Goff go first overall in the draft. He isn't that different from a Jared Goff. He's going to play within structure, a lot of defined read stuff, doesn't have a wow arm, but enough of an arm, incredible placement and accuracy. He needs to play in a scheme that's like that. If you put Mac Jones in an air raid scheme and say, go be a superhero, go play a hero ball for us, you're gonna be sorely disappointed. And I think as we're seeing more QB friendly offenses, which used to be such a no word, QB friendly, why are you helping him out? Why is he a product of the scheme? Why are you using college stuff and spacing concepts? That used to be such a negative connotation to your offensive scheme. Now it's like, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we helping our quarterback? Why aren't we making people's lives easier? And it's so funny to look at a Phillip Rivers, because for most of his career, it was hero ball. It was so many concepts where this is the least quarterback friendly system out there. That's what Tom Brady's doing down in Tampa. All his vertical shots and down the field stuff, it's hero ball. There's nothing that helps Tom Brady. Nothing's off play action. There's no pre-snap motion. There's no, manipulation of personnel and play call sequencing. This is what Marino also did for most of his career, just hero ball from the pocket. But long story short, Mac Jones, you can win with this guy, but how you use him and making sure he's in a quarterback friendly scheme is going to be really important. He's won a lot of games. He's accurate. He's got a lot of poise. He's got the tools and the mental makeup. It's just a matter of what are you going to ask him to do at the next level.
Yeah, that was really spot on. And Phillip Rivers, man, outside of after 2010, it was just like you said, it was all hero ball, and it was fun to watch, but obviously
that hero ball is always great, especially from Rivers, because he will wow you with some of those hero ball throws and plays from the pocket and anticipation. And he's one of those vets where it's like, you know what? I ain't holding this ball in the pocket. You guys better get open. I'm going to put it where it needs to be, but I'm not going to be a sitting duck back here. And sometimes those veteran quarterbacks are fun to watch too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, this has been fantastic. Hopefully our listeners have been able to learn about some guys, because I feel like we did mention a lot of guys that were not super well known. Obviously we talked about the Alabama guys, but thank you so much for this information, Ben, and we look forward to covering your work. What do you have? Obviously the Senior Bowl is coming up, but outside of that, what are you working on these days?
Yeah, so I'm back over with NFL Network, working on Senior Bowl coverage for next week. Whatever semblance of the combine we might have next month, and then on to the NFL draft. I do a lot of research and video for our lead draft analyst, Daniel Jeremiah. I also do film breakdowns over at the Athletic, Wisconsin, on the Green Bay Packers. They might have one game left, maybe two games left. We'll see after Sunday. And then we're fully into draft mode. So we'll see what teams join us in the draft season after Sunday night. But it's the gift that keeps on giving. I love doing this stuff all year round. It's just fun that this time of year, it seems like the rest of the country joins us. And and it's my job to catch everybody up with everything we've seen since you guys been gone. So it's an exciting time.
I love that. For draft season never stops for some of us. For others, it's just after the season. All right, Ben, thank you so much. Chargers fans, make sure you follow Ben at @BenFennell_NFL. I know a lot of you have talked to me about film breakdowns and things like that. Ben does great stuff with film breakdowns and tweets and stuff like that. So make sure and give him a follow. Ben, have a good one, man. We look forward to seeing your work at the Senior Bowl and beyond.
Take care.